Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Let me tell you about my guest today, Joe Martino. There are not many people who set out on a mission to change the world, but 27-year-old Joe Martino has never been one to let anything stand in his way. He is a Canadian with an international scope and on a mission to promote peace, personal awakening, and world change. He is the producer of the 3 Collective Evolution documentaries and is a founding member of the Collective Evolution Facebook page and a website. And I haven't talked to Joe in about a year or so. Welcome back, Joe. It's great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for the intro. Yeah, it's been a while since we connected. I think, like we were saying before, the last time must have been that 3rd documentary.
Yes. I still have memories of the Collective Evolution. What was that, a station wagon?
Yeah. It was the Volvo.
The Volvo, yes, the CE Volvo.
Yeah, those were good times back on that visit.
Yes, absolutely. So, Joe, we spoke a little bit before the show, and, my audience seems to be changing and growing, and I thought today's show would be a great opportunity to reintroduce you or introduce you to some of our listeners that may not know about your work. If you're in the consciousness realm, I'm pretty sure you all know about Collective Evolution, but just in case, I thought this would be a great time to hear a little bit about your story. And I guess, Joe, let's start the show, let's start this talk with how did you get from being a young man who loved baseball, going to college, following the quote unquote, life dream, going to school and, having a job and whatnot, to kind of having the courage to change that direction, to do this work that you're doing now with Collective Evolution?
Yeah, for sure. The beauty side to the whole thing, and this is what I'm going to be sharing in some of the work that I'm working on now, is that growing up, although I was sort of going through the steps of going to school, doing those things, and kind of living that average life, there was always this undying question of like, is this right for me? Is this where I want to be? Why do I have all these feelings that, when I was in school, I had all these feelings like, there's something up with this place, or there's something going on here, and I was never that comfortable. And a lot of those questions from a young age continued up to when I was in college. And what I find what happens to a lot of people is the whole idea that at some point things just kind of break. They break in your own psyche or in your own spirituality, in your own emotions or something like that. And you're presented with an experience where you feel like you have no choice but to face what's going on within you. And for me, that was in college when I became pretty much just down and depressed about everything I was doing in college. I was a happy-go-lucky type person. And when I was around my friends, we were having a great time. But, those nights when you lay awake at night and you're kind of just thinking like, man, what am I doing? When I sit on the subway going to school, I know this isn't what I want to do. This can't be it forever. Like, I can't leave one institution here and then go to work at another and just feel uninspired and that I'm not living something that, is true to me. And I think that's where it kind of all started. It was a reflection period, and it led me to finally one day gather up the courage to say, what would my life look like if I decided to just kind of do and explore what I thought was important to me. Now, obviously, I had a little bit of a lucky experience in the sense that I was younger when I had these feelings and decided to explore them. So I didn't have as much responsibility in my life as, say, a mother or father would. But that experience is what led me to learn more about my spirituality, learn more about the world, how it functioned. And that led me to create Collective Evolution, which was a platform that was going to help people to explore themselves, explore their consciousness, explore their beliefs, understand what is going on in their own lives, and why they're doing the things that they're doing, and then also questioning what and why the way the world is the way it is. Like, these are important questions that once people explore, it completely opens up how they see the world. And this was kind of the big inspiration for me at the time, and still is today.
That's great, Joe, and thank you for sharing that. As I'm listening to you talk about these beginning moments of clarity and deciding to actually move in the direction to not only explore them, but to share your experience and to share this consciousness awareness with other people, I can't help but think back. I mean, I've known you for many years, and I remember, geez, I mean, we were all doing, I don't want to say we were all doing the same thing, but I can't help but remember like the explosion of our pages on Facebook and all these other organizations that cropped up. And I can't help but notice how you have not only have you maintained the quality material of your work, but you've maintained an obvious integrity to the truth of your work. Whereas, I hate to say this, some of our other peers have gone on and have become for-profit oriented, and there are websites I can't even go to because there's so many pop-ups and advertisements, and I'm like, I don't even want to look at their page anymore. But what do you attribute that to, maintaining the integrity without getting caught up in the success of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's a challenge that I think a lot of people are kind of facing and going through in the world out there when it comes to these types of sites and anything happening online. Is they've gotten used to doing something, and it's changing now, and so now they're like, well, how do I just keep up and keep growing and keep making more money and doing that? And I feel for that in the sense that I can understand what might be playing through, but for us, it was always just being super aligned with the mission, with what it is that we wanted to do. With what it is that was important to us. And, we've seen over the course of, this almost 7 years now that we've been doing what we're doing, what integrity and quality leads to in terms of, having people recognize that work and having it transform people's lives, which ultimately was our goal and our mission, right? We wanted to put out stuff that was going to impact people. And, we get, recognition or opportunities to partner with bigger organizations that are doing awesome stuff. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that we've maintained that integrity. So part of it for us is, staying very, very true to the mission, but then also realizing what long-term sustainable and real-world potential comes from being able to stay true to what it is that's important to you, and not just kind of say, hey, I can make a quick buck, let's just do it, Yeah,
absolutely. And with that being said, you did just mention that you've been doing this now for about 7 years, and I'm sure that your goals and your mission have either changed or evolved over that time. In the beginning, it was all about the films and maybe creating the website, creating the Facebook page. How would you explain your mission then and now?
Okay, so at the very, very core of everything we do, it was all about, raising consciousness, helping people see, or, creating a space to allow people to see the world and themselves and the way we're living as humans here on the earth in a different way. That's kind of the underlying thing that's there. And through that also there's, growing and developing the individual, really helping to understand that who we are at our core and all these sorts of things, because, in our belief, in our theory of everything, it was that this would lead to a more peaceful, more harmonious world where we weren't trying to kill each other every 5 seconds, right? So that's kind of the underlying core and mission. Now, what's shifted over the years is how we've delivered that message. We've found new and interesting ways to relate to how people are thinking now and to what they're exposed to now, and think, how can we slip in these differing ways of thinking, or how can we encourage people to keep a more open mind, or to kind of break out of old patterns and old belief systems so that they can see a different possibility. And so the way we generate our content, whether it's written or whether it's video or whether it's films, it kind of has that underlying neutral, like non-aggressive tone to it that just really opens people up. And I'm so happy when we hear from people that they notice that's like a bit of a trademark to our work, is that people recognize that neutral, very like, hey, here's the information, do with it what you will. We keep this underlying conscious tone in there, but with the ability to cover very mainstream issues, through that language. And so I would say that's kind of like how things have changed since the beginning, is really just dialing into that delivery method and really getting clear on it. A couple of the other key things that we've been working on is really getting into, we'll call it the offline world a little more. We recently picked up some land, and there's a nice house on the land, and we're building a bit of a retreat center out there, so we can start hosting live events and doing stuff where we can kind of bring people together face to face and go through transformation, right? That's another huge avenue to this whole thing that I think is kind of coming full circle. We went from, as a world, we went from being very face to face. We've gone incredibly online, and the more we're going online, I feel like we're kind of hitting this tipping point where people are like, hey, I kind of want that face-to-face connection again. I want to feel that a little more. So I feel like it's coming back to that, and it just so happens that some of the projects and stuff we're working on is very much in alignment with that. So we're excited to see how the next 1 to 2 years unfold when it comes to just really getting people together.
How exciting, and I wish you luck on that. I myself have experimented in bringing that, putting it on the ground face to face, and for me, I've had a difficult time. It seems like maybe my audience just loves the idea of being able to click online and read the stuff and see the videos, but to actually get out of their house and go somewhere has been a little bit more difficult. I've noticed, and I don't know what that says about humanity as a whole, or maybe just my fans, but I do wish you luck, and I look forward to seeing more of that with a lot of the other consciousness organizations, and it'd be a good thing for all of us to start coming together physically. So, Joe, you guys have covered a multitude of topics and everything, and we both basically parallel as far as the work that we do when it comes to the topics everything from geopolitical stuff, talking about the bankers, the Fed, Federal Reserve, quote unquote conspiracy type stuff, as well as the mystical and the metaphysical. And you've done such a great job to bring that into balance. Do you find that you're focusing more toward one over the other, or do you feel that you guys still have a balance in that?
It's a good question. I think it really all depends on who you ask, realistically. The way I see it is, and it's, I'm going to come right out and say it. I'm sure not everybody, even on our direct team, would agree with everything we put out in terms of a content strategy. But I think the beauty of it is that when you look at what it is that we're putting out and what we're doing, everybody always talks about niches and creating, making sure your audience is getting what they want. And I agree to that, with that in some form. But at the same time, I have witnessed over the past 7 years in doing this, that when you focus on a lot of different topics, it sort of all leads back to opening and expanding an individual. There's a really interesting thing that happens is you start to get people who may have first come to find your work through something, I don't know, related to, we'll just say, it's a political time, you write an article about Bernie Sanders or something like that, and that leads to them coming to the website. They decide to like the Facebook page. 3 months later, they're starting to be exposed to a lot of different content that's related to consciousness, that's related to health, that's related to stuff that's now having them, turn inside, and they're reflecting on, whoa, how am I living my own life? How am I, how am I treating my body? And what's interesting about the whole thing is when you get the emails now, and people are saying, hey, I liked your page, or I read an article about this, and then 3 months later, my life is now totally different. Like, you've completely transformed my life. And this is why I think sometimes covering a multitude of, in a very wide range and sort of a balance of content related from anything from consciousness to self-help to personal development, health, wellness, all the way into the political and even the extraterrestrial realm, I believe it touches a lot of different people. And I truly believe that a lot of people right now are being driven by something that is very common. And that common thing that is touching everybody, deep down, and I think into the heart, into the soul, is the idea that they're realizing there's something more to the world than the sort of lie, so to speak, that's been pulled over their eyes. That is, this world is just kind of what you see. People are searching in a deeper way, even if they don't know it yet, to something that's deeper within themselves. And so because of that, the more they're exposed to stuff that feeds that a little bit, the more they start to I guess, foster that feeling within themselves and start to understand what it is.
That's great. And actually, that brings me to my next question is, for you as an individual and what you've seen happening over the last, 10 years, 20 years, however long you've been aware of this change that is happening, do you feel that there is some, not to sound like a pun, but a collective spiritual evolution happening? Is there an awakening happening? Have you had enough evidence to call it something like that?
Absolutely. And it's funny because you bring this up. Just last night I was laying in bed and I was talking to my girlfriend, and we were talking about how I've had this idea for a book for the past couple of years that I wanted to write based on the 3 films that we created. And the book would be called The Collective Evolution, which is kind of just like the films. But the interesting factor involved is that as I made each of the films, wrote, researched, all these sorts of things, and you're finding them, you're starting to realize, like, holy crap, this stuff is like happening. But not only that, there's so much evidence. Like, it's astounding. And looking at C3, which was made 2 years ago about now, so much of what I was talking about in that film, like the solar cycle research, all this stuff that was kind of not really that big, has become huge in the past couple of years. And there's now people traveling around doing talks, pulling in 500, 600, 700 people, just on one topic in that film, which was solar cycles and how that's influencing human consciousness and all that sort of stuff. So I'd say that based on my research, what I've been exposed to through my work, and then also just my own feelings within myself and what I observe, I'd definitely say there is a collective or conscious evolution that's happening on a planet. And I really think I want to kind of write that book and just put it out there, because I think if people saw the dots that are connected when it comes to all the different things that are happening and what it's really telling us about ourselves, I think it would be a bit of an eye-opener that could lead to greater expansion of people's individual consciousness.
Yes, yeah. Hear, hear. And I support you for that. Do it. Write the book. We need more books out there on this particular topic. With that being said, in the work that you do and the work that I do, we I don't know about you, but I seem to come across many people that are very angry or very fearful of whether it be the government, whether it be the old story of left versus right, conservative versus liberal, and I know that both of us are trying to erase that invisible line of division. Do you feel that those that are angry is there some type of internal trauma that we're trying to heal? Is there some type of individual consciousness, trauma, a crisis that is going on there? Because To put it blatantly, I'm just going to say it is that I know with, let's say in the truth movement, there seems to be a lot of hostility, but yet there is a yearning or a need to bring people together, though it's done in a hostile manner. Is that a cosmic crisis, for lack of a better term?
I really think it depends on how you look at it in terms of each individual person. Been again having been doing this for so long, you come across and speak to a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds or life experiences, and who are all kind of in that mode of searching and seeking and realizing and uncovering. And some are angry, and some are I guess upset, which is I guess would be slightly different, and some are sort of just seeing it as like a motivational factor. And a lot of times people say that you need to first get angry to motivate yourself to do something, which because the anger motivates. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that per se. I think in some cases, absolutely. And I think this is what the world is really learning, is that, a lot of cases are very unique. It's hard to come up with very generalized, this is what's happening to everybody sort of statements. But I think that when you look at, someone who might be angry at what's happening, whether it be through the government or whether corporations are doing, sometimes it comes from a feeling deep down. I mean, if you were to really trace it back, of some feeling of powerlessness, some feeling of hopelessness, not sure what they're even capable of doing, and not having seen their own power within themselves to shift something, and therefore are kind of doing the only thing that they know how to do, which is, I want to fix this situation by brute force because I feel like that's how it has to be done. Meanwhile, I've seen in a number of cases, including in my own life, that when you kind of come to the peace within it, within yourself first, you actually start to like attract people in a completely different way, and they start to realize, oh wow, like there's something going on with you. What is that? That I recognize something that's kind of inspiring me, or that's making me see something in a big way, and that leads to greater shifts of consciousness in other people. And so I think it's important to kind of look at, if you are feeling angry, or if there is something that's really bothering you about something you see in the world. I mean, not to judge it as, oh, this is terrible. I'm not allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be angry. Feel whatever you need to feel. Identify whatever you need to identify. It's great to feel it. But I'm not sure that harboring or holding on to the anger, or doing everything through the anger is the right way to go about it, at least, in my opinion. So it's all about, why am I really angry? And explore that.
Yeah, yeah.
Explore
I can't help but feel that it's almost as if we are going through, it kind of like the stages of grief. We have this moment of clarity. We start seeing through the veil, the illusion, the corruption, the lies, et cetera, and we kind of get we kind of fall into that cycle of grief of, oh my goodness, I've believed this for so long, or I've supported this for so long, and now now I'm angry. And then from the anger comes the depression, that comes the inspiration, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe it's something along those lines, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because even the anger, oh, I supported this for so long. Well, do I feel duped? Do I feel embarrassed? Do I feel, like other people are going to judge me because I believe this and it wasn't true all this time? Like, you know what I mean? These are like the underlying core reasons as to why, the anger is coming out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're going to be coming up on a commercial break already. I can't believe how quickly this talk is going. We're going to be taking a commercial break in just a few moments. Everybody, by all means, go check out the Collective Evolution Facebook page and their website. Very easy to.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio. My name is Bernard Alvarez, and we are here today speaking with Joe Martino from Collective Evolution. Welcome back to the show, Joe. I have, I guess I have a question, well, several questions I want to ask you in reference to the work that you've been doing over the last several years, and some of the main topics that we're both very interested in, and trying to get information out there. And I want to ask you, In reference to healing and health, where do you feel we are, and what have you seen as far as the evolution and the understanding of perhaps expanding our consciousness when it comes to healing and health?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think for the first time in a long time, I mean, I say this, with my 28 years of experience here on Earth, so this may not be like super incredibly valuable, but I say for the first time in a while, at least from what I've seen, we're seeing a really big, I would say, more mainstream insurgence of openness to medical treatment or physical treatment that goes beyond simply treating the symptom, i.e., it's more integrative, it's more holistic, it's looking at the emotional side and perhaps the energetic side if you want to look at that as well. Why I think this is incredibly important is I think what's really starting to happen through the more we look at the research that's coming out of scientific institutions that are looking at the physical body as more than just a hey, I had an illness and this illness is caused by this physical thing and that's it. The more it starts to look beyond that and like, hey, what else could be causing this? We're learning stuff about emotions, the way they affect us, the way energy around us affects us. Things as simple as even like to go to an energetic level. Because sometimes people hear the word energy and they start to go, wait a minute, like what does that even mean? You're freaking me out. Well, put it this way, when your Wi-Fi signal is sending Wi-Fi through your entire house, that's a frequency. And that frequency interacts with the frequency of your body. And it can create physical symptoms in your body, but it's all just a frequency. So this whole energy thing isn't really something that's crazy, mystical, blow your mind, like, oh my God. Guess what? We all emanate a frequency. It's measurable. If you look at the Institute of Heart Math, the research they've been doing, they know now that the human heart emanates an aura or a frequency field that goes up to about 1 to 2 kilometers in length, and people's brains actually can decode what that frequency is saying and understand what that person is feeling. Now, you might experience this by walking into a room and feeling like, whoa, that person seems angry. You don't know what's happened in their life. Maybe you don't really know exactly what their facial expression is saying, but you can feel that they're upset or they're angry. And this is kind of leading to this whole point I'm about to make, where I think for the first time in a long time, it's becoming very clear that our illnesses and our ways of treating people cannot be so systematic in terms of an individual symptom or an individual illness. Each person is an individual and is unique. Their condition is unique. Their composition is unique. Their illness that they're experiencing in the form they're experiencing it in is unique. And therefore, a lot of pre-work in terms of the practitioner needs to be done to understand where exactly that person is at in order to develop the proper treatment that's going to go along with their specific condition. When you see things like traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, these sorts of things, and you look at why they don't work so well in terms of the mainstream's eyes, it's because the mainstream is pulling a general, systematic Western medicine type view, and it's putting it on top of traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, which you can't do, because they're not systematic in the sense of if you have this or feel this, you use this. The way those things more so work is, okay, let's have you come in, let's learn everything we can possibly about you, your individual composition, your individual situation, and then let's build a treatment that fully and holistically addresses your problem. And that's the difference, I think, between the Western view and sort of, I guess, some of the more Eastern philosophies around medicine. And I think we're seeing a big insurgence of that coming over here to the West, where we're seeing even things like New German medicine, where we're starting to discover that even just by clearing past traumatic experiences and emotions, people's physical illnesses are going away. And these cases are building. And so the more they build, the more I think we're going to understand about what's really going on.
I agree, and I must say that I wish that people would stop considering quote unquote alternative style healing or non-Western healing as a last resort. Many times I see people that are going through very difficult illnesses, and they're like, okay, well, this is the last chance. I'm gonna take that. Rhino, horn or something, whatever it may be, or even cannabis for that matter. I'm very grateful to see how much cannabis is starting to be used in the treatment of cancer. Now that it's starting to be legalized here in the United States, I'm seeing more and more people that are turning to that first versus all the deadly radiation and chemo. But again, it's just like you said, it's the evolution of seeing it, learning about it, and the consciousness. And I believe it's also a certain courage that comes with embracing that type of thinking.
Absolutely, and again, because part of it too is, and we'll call it out right away. I mean, the placebo effect, for example, right? Western medicine kind of views that as like this, unfortunate little detail that seems to happen that they have to weed in or out of their studies and say, well, this has to be more effective than a placebo or this. But to me, the placebo effect is fascinating because that in alone suggests an ability to heal without an intervention of an actual physical treatment that is specific to an illness. The placebo effect suggests that just by thinking you are being treated, that you are actually, getting better.
Yeah.
And I go back to a couple of the studies that always used to blow my mind. I mean, there was a whole bunch of people that they took who had knee surgeries to heal a specific problem that they had in their knee, and they actually performed on 50% of them surgeries that were real. And then on the other 50%, they cut them open, pretended to do the whole surgery, took both groups through the same rehab, and the results in improvement in knee condition were exactly the same in both groups. What does it tell you? Even from a very surgical, physical, level, people's minds were overcoming their physical illness.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important, to have that level of trust and openness. I mean, people will then say, okay, well, if it's a placebo, it won't work the same. Perhaps you're right. But I think there's something fascinating there, and that is the unmeasurable things such as thoughts, such as beliefs, such as emotions that can have a big impact on our health.
Absolutely, and if anything, I think it justifies the placebo effect. The mind can heal the body. It's a great vindication of it, validation, I should say. Moving on, I want to cover a couple more topics if we have enough time here, but. I personally believe that, and I talk about this often lately, especially with my new series, the Awakening Code, about how the planet Earth and every living thing on it is going through some kind of awakening. But the global awakening might be different than the individual awakening. The individual, of course, is, we're working on the inside, whereas the masses might take a little longer, or it might be a little bit different, and we really don't have much control over the external awakening as we do over the internal awakening. With that being said, I do feel that all of these political aspects, I guess we could talk about, whether we want to call them political revolutions or everything from the Occupy movement to Arab Spring to the Bernie Sanders phenomenon, things like that are literally a part of the global consciousness coming into itself, growing and evolving into itself. I'm wondering, how do you see what's happening now with the world in terms of our collective evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on it, well, when bringing up something that's incredibly relevant, which is, the political stuff that's going on. You look at, you're basically watching when you look at someone like, let's just put for a moment Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in the same category. And why am I going to do that? Because both of them, like it or not, are actually being just kind of downright honest when they talk. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Trump, like what he says or not. I mean, it's vulgar sometimes. It's ridiculous sometimes. It's racist sometimes. There's stuff all over the place. But he's not trying to create that facade of, guys, I'm this perfect person and you should vote for me and this, that, whatever. He's just, this is me. Like it or not, this is me, is what I'm going to say. And Bernie's doing the same thing. Then you flip over to a lot of the more, incredibly traditional politicians who are the wolves in sheep's clothing, and they're saying, yeah, hey, vote for me, I'm awesome, and this, that, and la da 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 da. And so just looking at those two versus the other candidates, you're already seeing an interesting reflection of what's happening, I believe, collectively, which is people are being forced, and they're just deciding to be like, you know what, I'm just going to be genuine. Enough of the hiding, enough of the facade, enough of the bullshit. I'm just getting straight to the point and like, here's who I am, right? Trump is admitting, hey, I am a wolf. I'm not gonna hide it. I'm a wolf. You know what I mean? Don't think I'm a sheep. I'm a wolf. Bernie, I mean, I'm not saying I'm in love with everything he says, but I do think he's on a platform talking to people about a lot of things that I really think the world needs to hear and recognize. And even if, and I believe this to be true, even if he gets into power and the corporations are still kind of pushing and controlling and making the decisions and he doesn't really get to do much, he at least has had the platform for the past while to say things to the world that are incredibly important, and he got people listening to them, which I think is, again, another reflection of we're having more mainstream insurgences of important and consciousness-raising information that helps people to see things differently. And I think when you watch all of this stuff that's happening, whether it's in film, whether it's in music, whether it's in politics, it's pushing people towards seeing and kind of being open to a different type of world.
I completely agree, Joe. I completely agree. Now, let me play the devil's advocate with our conspiracy folks out there. Are they just playing the Illuminati's endgame by getting us to vote against against the establishment? And what can we say to show that that's not the case?
So I guess for me to understand, I guess fully what the conspiracy here would be, it would be that they're trying to get us to vote for, say, someone like Bernie, who would be sort of non-establishment, so that maybe things go awry, so the establishment has to come back in and say, "See, you needed us all along."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a classic. I mean, to be honest, I think there's a lot of validity to a lot of things that have been shared in the conspiracy community, if you want to call it the conspiracy. I personally don't like the word, but we have to use it because I understand it. But I think there's a lot of validity to stuff, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of delusion in the community. And I say that with a kind heart because I have come from that community to some degree as well, right? And
absolutely.
But I have seen a ton of it. There's a lot of misinformation that gets spread. There's a lot of really off the wall sort of no evidence based, no bearing in truth sort of information that's passed around. And I'm always one. I mean, when this whole flat earth thing was going on, I was the first one to say, okay, let's look at the evidence. Fine, I will look at it, right? And that's how I feel about everything. Let me look at it before I make a decision. But when you see that there's nothing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
You then have to say, okay, at this point, there's nothing. So we're going to continue with what we have, right? And so the way I feel is I'm not seeing enough unless I think Bernie rose to the occasion. He gained popularity as a reflection of what's happening in our world. Do I think he's going to get into power? I don't know. I really, really don't know. And I don't think that if he did, the world would magically change, because I don't think that he's going to be able to have much pull. But I'm also at this point not really leaning towards, hey, if he gets in power, everything's going to go to crap, and then the establishment is going to step back in. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, and a lot of it comes from speculation, and there, like you said, there's no truth in speculation. It's just the what ifs of the world.
Yeah, but absolutely. I do value the ability or the desire to have a foresight so that we can make our decisions intelligently. I just think that foresight has to come with some level of evidence or making sense as to what would happen. I.e., it better be pretty clear that if we voted in Bernie, that everything would go to crap before we did. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's not clear. So
absolutely, and I think a lot of that comes, and I guess this is a good time to say this, is a lot of that speculation comes from the old idea of what socialism is and what communism is and what fascism is. A lot of people have this misunderstanding that there's populist socialism and then there's government socialism, and there's a big difference there. And I think a lot of the fear comes from misunderstanding that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, politics here in Canada is not quite as, I guess it's not quite as intense, we'll say, as it is in the United States. So, I mean, I can't fully relate, but from an outsider looking in, it does seem like, just from country to country, it's kind of interesting to see how much divide there is between different parties and different styles of leadership, and how much, I guess, even misinformation there is about what is actually happening. I mean, people, every time we wrote something or posted a video about Bernie, people were going bananas, like, oh, this guy's a socialist, this, socialist, that. And you ask them, like, do you even know what a socialist is? Like, do you even know what that means? And they all just refer back to Hitler. And it's like, well, what, like, how does that have been, and to be honest, when you look at the thing, so aside from, take a Holocaust, take all that stuff away for a second, you look at what he did to his country during the Great Depression. Within 1 year, he turned his entire country around and had everybody working. He stopped the importing of cigarettes and alcohol. When you look at kind of what he did, he cared a lot for the people. After that, we'll not get into that conversation.
Right.
But it's just the idea that his view was, he was passionate about helping people, right? That's when you read the history on his story, he was passionate about helping people, right? So I don't know.
It's interesting. It's very interesting, and I'm actually excited to see how this all plays out, especially later today and with the coming months ahead, to see how it plays out. Let's move on, because we've only got about 5 more minutes, and we had touched on how shall I say, the cosmic muffin topic in the room, the extraterrestrial topic, and I do believe that this is an important topic when it comes to the collective evolution of humanity. Common sense tells us there is life out there somewhere. Common sense tells us that perhaps there are races that are more advanced than us. On the topic of disclosure, there's a lot of misunderstanding in the sense that people want the government to tell them, that ETs exist. I am one that, if the government came out and said something, I'm probably not going to believe them. I believe disclosure is more individual, and I believe disclosure is happening on a person-to-person basis with their own experience, and we're getting a lot of these people, such as, Miriam Delicado, contactees and people like that's where we're going to really get our information. But as far as the whole picture, where does the extraterrestrial topic fit into the evolution of humanity? Is it a part of our growth? Is it about us connecting with our intergalactic family out there? What do you feel is the importance of it?
Yeah, I think it's we're seeing a lot in coming forward in the whole VR space. We're seeing a lot coming forward in the technological space, whether that be through connecting people, whether that be through our health becoming better. We're seeing all these things that are sort of advancing our ability to live here on Earth. And I think the extraterrestrial thing, when you realistically look at it, at least in my view, is we've been doing things here on Earth, with us humans, quote unquote, on a public level, i.e., there has been some, in my view, ET, interaction, but it's been very, very, very private. And we're just kind of now reaching this point where I believe our next level of sort of evolution in terms of consciousness, in terms of species, in terms of playing with other, beings, is to start interacting with extraterrestrials. And, we look at it, I mean, pretend, we were, stuck to the land that we're on, and we couldn't really travel across the sea to get to, Europe and these other places, if you're in the West. And, you would see them as almost like these alien beings that you never saw, that you never even were interacting with, that you didn't even know existed, so to speak, and that you only kind of heard of them through a myth that maybe one day one of them floated over on a raft or something. And then all of a sudden, boats start going across from Europe to North America, and now people are interacting, and it's like, oh wow, like now we're learning a whole different way of life. We're learning things that you guys were thinking up and doing, and stuff over there, and that changes your world. That helps you evolve. That helps you grow. That helps you connect to people in a different way. Well, now we can almost reach almost everybody on this planet, with exception of some of the indigenous tribes that prefer to stay sort of quiet and private. Well, we've been doing that for a very long time. And when you look at how fast humanity grows and evolves and learns, I mean, we've been doing that for long enough that we know enough about each other to say that, hey, we're ready for another group of friends. And I see that on a bigger picture, on a conscious, on a evolutionary level, as saying, all right, those beings out there that are 1 or 2 planets away or whatever it might be, wherever they're coming from, that's, we're ready to cross the sea and meet them now. And that's kind of where I see what I see this whole thing about. And I do think disclosure will come. I think it'll be a mix. We're going to see drops of truth through more popular culture type stuff, even the news, even other politicians, this stuff here and there. And some of it may be misleading, some of it may be very accurate. This comes down to our own discernment and allowing alternative truth websites to really explore this stuff properly and then disseminate the information. But I think that's where we're headed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Joe. And we're running out of time. What would be, if the whole world was listening, what would be your advice to humanity?
I'll go with the big thing that I think that I'm very connected with right now is just the idea of do what inspires you, connect to what is important to you, what gets you going. And that's not to say you got to drop everything and now make that your career, but connect to what it is that lights you up, that gets you excited, that inspires you, and make it a part of your day, a part of your week, something that you do on a regular basis, because through that, you emanate a very powerful sense of being. It aligns you with other things, connects you with people, and I think it creates a better world. And while that seems small and that doesn't seem like it's going to make a big difference, you watch what happens, because that's what I did 7 years ago, and here I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, we'll be back next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a wonderful week. We love you very much. Bye-bye now.